Building a Strong Family Altar. That is the title of our 21 days devotional, and this is the first part of it, where we're trying to look at what is an altar, how does one build it, and look at some examples and look at some application. So, what is a family altar? What is an altar? If you look at your dictionary, you probably will get a definition that speaks about a place of offering, a place of worship. Maybe some dictionaries will go to an extent of describing it as, this place made out of rocks and dirt to form a place of worship or a place of offering. So for this study, we define an altar as more than just a physical place or a time of worship or sacrifice to a deity. Rather, we define it as an established or continued, most often multi-generational, covenantal relationship between a deity and a person, family, or people group. So, Old Testament altars were physical places where sacrifices were offered. However, the underlying purpose of that altar was always to establish a connection between that deity and the worshipper. For you and I as New Testament believers, an altar would be the cross of Jesus Christ. This is where God himself sacrificially offered the Lamb, that is Jesus, to establish a lasting covenantal relationship with mankind. Without the death of Jesus on the cross, there's no relationship between God and mankind. So, the day you got born again, the day you got saved, that's when that, covenantal relationship with God was established. So, it's very important for you to understand that. And also, whereas this relationship is permanent, for it to remain strong, it must be serviced. So what does that mean? That means that you have to maintain communication. You have to share your thoughts, your ideas, information, and resources with God, and vice versa, to foster intimacy. So, if the altar is not serviced, then it gets weak. What does that mean? That means that if a relationship is dormant, there's no communication, there's no sharing, that relationship is weak. The opposite of that is true as well. If there's communication, if there's exchange, if there's sharing, then the relationship is strong. So that means that one cannot have an intermittent communication with God and expect to have intimacy. So I guess the question therefore would be, how does one build an altar? We have a good example in Genesis chapter 4 verse 10, where we're told about Noah. The Bible says Noah built an altar to the Lord in Genesis 8 chapter 10. That is after they came out of the ark. Now here's an important thing. He built this altar to the Lord. It was a place of connecting him, his family, and the entirety of creation unto the Lord. And verse 21 says, when God smelled the savor that came from an altar, he was pleased. Now it's very important for you and I to understand that altars are not only to God. One can have an altar to an idol. What is an idol? An idol is a God substitute. Anything and anyone that takes the place of God is an idol. So it's very important for you to understand that it's important for families to have family altars. In other words, this connection that is active, that is alive between you and God. So altars are not Old Testament phenomenon, they are New Testament phenomenon. As New Testament believers, we believe in altars. Good example would have been, like I said, God presenting Jesus on the cross. Also when you read Acts the book of Acts chapter 10, we told about Cornelius who offered prayers and alms unto the Lord, and it came as a memorial before God. That's a type of an altar. New Testament believers, we don't have a place where we have stones piled together to form an altar. An altar is that relationship that is serviced through prayer, praise, worship, reading the word, giving. So it's very important. So practically, how does one build an altar in their family? You must commit to daily family devotions. You must have a time where, as a family, you don't just pray before you go to sleep, but you have time to praise God in song. You have time to share the word. You have time to pray. Not only does that help you to come together as a family, but it helps you to draw nearer to God. Number 2, it's very important that we understand that there must be giving taking place on the altar. Yes, Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice, but one way to show the heart of a person is through their giving. Giving your life first, committing your family to God, giving your resources, giving your time, your skill, your talents. And number 3, dedicating yourself to the service of the Lord. What does that mean? When you serve God, it's considered worship. A family that's dedicated to the practical service of the Lord has a strong altar. You have people that says, I love God, but they wouldn't do anything for God. Their lives are devoted to things of this world, to their academics, to their careers and all that. But to service the altar of God, you have